Hey, this is Dennis DeYoung. Remember me? I used to be a lady. That guy, me and Sticks. That probably distorted the whole microphone. But let me just say this to you. You're watching The Hole.
Welcome to The Hole. I am Rob Sprance.
I'm Franco Del Valle.
I'm Lori Levine.
And we are having lunch with pop icon Taylor Dayne. How you doing, Taylor?
Wonderful. Thank you.
I like that we're actually having lunch. I think this is very cool.
We've definitely never did this before.
Yep. The new one.
We are at the wonderful. You are on the stupendous Beverly Boulevard, right across from Cedar Sinai's and Beverly Center. As you can see, guys, you are on the boulevard with me having lunch right here in LA.
Awesome. Well, it's so great to have you. I'm going to start with my Taylor Dayne story because I have. So a friend of mine, I think it's 1990. Okay, a few friends of mine. Now, I was a Long Island guy, but I was a rock guy, right? Like I'm like a metal guy. You know, there were two types.
So was I. In a lot of ways, you know that.
Yeah. So he invited me to come see you. He had an extra ticket to see Taylor Dayne, and I think it was Corey Hart at the Beacon Theater. Okay, so I was like, sure, I'll go. Corey Hart doesn't show up. That was the first thing. I don't know why he wasn't on the tour, but he wasn't there. And then Taylor comes on and turns the entire Beacon Theater into a dance club, blows the roof off the place for a good 90 minutes to 2 hours. Like, it was fantastic. So I was converted right then and there. I became a fan. I bought the albums, the CDs at the time.
Was it dance or was it an experience?
It was an experience.
Dance. It was not just dance, like it was gritty. It was.
Yeah, it was. I think you opened with like a Hendrix song or something like that. Like
that was probably that must have been 92, I think.
Yeah, so so maybe that's what it was, but absolutely blew the roof off the place, right? So, you know, when I heard that you were available for an interview, I was like, oh, absolutely, I would love to do that. So since then, I mean, the numbers are staggering. 17 top 20 singles. 17. I had to make sure that number was right. That's incredible. 75 million albums. And I'll stop stroking you in a sec. 3 number ones. Okay. Now, this was a different time. This was not streaming time. Every time you sold a record, someone had to go to a store to buy a record. It's a big difference now. You just click and that's a stream and that's about. But to have those numbers back then, especially when people had to actually go and buy those records, it's phenomenal. That must have been out of control, hard to handle, and just fathom that you were doing that.
But imagine the experience when we used to go to record stores. They lasted for hours.
I know. You just go browse.
Remember that?
I do.
Remember?
I'm dating myself, but it used to always. It was even like a TSS had a record store. That was the big record store back then. We'd all go to TSS and look at all the albums and all of the records.
And that stands for Times Square stores.
That's right. You remember?
Because I used to fold fabric in the fabric section.
Did you really?
How incredibly tiring that was when somebody goes, go fold the interlock section. I go, that's like never ending, right? That just doesn't, it's no such section that could ever be folded like that. It's fabric that just doesn't, it's that fabric, that wilting fabric. It's wilting fabric, it's like dead fabric. So it's like you fold it, it just falls on itself.
So from all of those things, I'm always interested to know how that happens. How do you go? I mean, of course, the talent is there, but there's, there were so many people fighting for those spots, for those few coveted spots to even get a chance to do that. So, how does that happen? Where does your break come?
Well, where do breaks come? There is that. They come with tears. They come with drive, and they come with that moment where you can't possibly give up. Because if you give up, there's this voice inside you that says, I will basically die. And I know that sounds almost impossible to some people, but to me, it was basically like, I can't.
So were you
can't.
doing the club scene first? Like were you
Always. But
All right.
but I was very the fortunate side of being so growing up in New York. You see how I'm so blessed to have grown up in New York, because outside my door, literally born and raised in New York, is you're in the shadow of the greatest city, the most challenging city, and where everything has to unfold, the city where all must unfold, all must go. Now, it can happen in England, yes, it can happen in London, but all must unfold, all must go against the United States, all must challenge itself against touring USA, all come to USA to break. They all did.
Yeah.
So it all, and it all comes to New York, always does.
Mm-hmm.
So we were here. I my nucleus, my center, my parents was New York City. I was born in New York City Hospital. I was raised in the Bronx. I was raised in Long Island. My parents were avid theater goers, avid music listeners. My first records I was ever given were by my parents, right? Or by the little radio they gave me, my father. I was I listened to a WABC radio. I was a product of that, right? But we, at the late 60s and the early 70s, everything was played. Everything was played. That's Billy Preston to Karen Carpenter to the Stones to the Beatles. That's what radio was. It was the diversification of all music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it wasn't even about, like, it's funny, I'm a big fan.
There were no charts, separation. There was no segregation. It was all charted.
Yeah, they would just mix
it all on one channel.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of like the 60s and 70s and the Motown. And, sometimes those Time Life commercials come on where they play a couple of seconds of every song. And I just sit there and watch it for like an hour. And the one thing that I noticed about the music back then is there are people, like, you see how they look. First of all of the artists were much older than artists that break now. Like
most of the artists then were much older.
Yeah, like they would break in the 30s. Like you would see, like Christopher Cross or these people who would never ever even get a deal just based on their appearance back then, because it was just all about the music and writing great songs. And I'm sure that they would tell a different side of that as well. But it's true, the way music was back then, it didn't really matter what they look like. It didn't matter if the first single was from someone who was in their 30s or, 35 or whatever it was. Like they would just play.
You're right. I don't know, but they were babies. There's no way. I mean, I'm sure Christopher Cross, do you think he was 30 years old? I'm sure he was 17 writing Sailing. I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
He just looked like, I'm sure he was 18. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely sorry, wait for the bus to go by. there was definitely a difference in how radio is now and that. So, from what you
without a doubt. You just listen to what was played from 1970, 1969, the influences of Karen Carpenter's voice alone, what she must have, and then you just watch now. We have the brilliance of watching. We're so inundated, right? But we have the opportunity to watch these documentaries, right? Now we see the lives of, I watched Eric Clapton's documentary. I watched Eric Clapton, right? And you watch like Journey, right? You watch Neil Schon, who played in Derek and the Dominoes, a guitar player, prodigy, literally played in Derek and the Dominoes with Eric Clapton, and then you see the amount of musicianship that Neil Schon had, Eric Clapton, how Duane Allman played on that album, that masterpiece of Layla, with Eric Clapton, how much Eric Clapton is. We really, there's just so many layers and layers and layers and layers here. So much. It's incredible.
Yeah. So, and you can tell that you're influenced by all of it, because there's definitely a lot of R&B. in you. There's a lot of rock and older rock. There's a lot of dance. It's just everything kind of melded
That's
into what you did.
hardly even going into the funk. That's not even touching the
Yeah.
funk. I didn't even go to the funk. I didn't even get to Aretha, Al, Marvin, any of the funk. Hot, that's not even going into Hot Fudge or getting into any of the Atlanta Rhythm section, going into, any of the bigger acts of like none of the Maurice White was an insane influence to me, and Earth, Wind and Fire and the artists that, the first time I heard Can't Hide Love, I was like,
I know.
I was like, somebody stopped. It was an 8-track going in somebody's car. I couldn't even walk. I probably was, I don't know, 12, 13. It was on a radio, somebody's house. I just couldn't take it. I had to hear it. I don't know if any of you know that song. And I had the opportunity to sit down with Verdine, and Verdine was like, "Oh, Taylor, Maurice loved your voice," and Maurice, and I was like,
yeah, that blows you away, man. It's got yeah. When you
I met Verdine, but these are the things that you can't. If I could sit down with Joni Mitchell for 10 minutes and just talk about Blue for about a lifetime.
No. Yeah, you mentioned Karen Carpenter. To me, probably the best female voice, at least top 5 ever, and effortlessly smooth, just effortlessly. And it's all about just the tone. Like that's just something that she had. So when the part comes where you get the chance to do your first record, where are you at in your life at that time? Like what's happening where that opportunity comes to you where you get to do that? Do you have demos that you're passing around back then? Like how did you get the chance to even do it in the first place?
To do what? What was the first question? I missed it.
To make the first record. When you had the chance.
The very first record, a successful record? Which record, though? Tell it? Which one?
Yeah, Tell It to My Heart.
That was Rick and I. That was not the first record. That, Rick and I had started working together. I've done 12 inches before that. But when Rick and I started working together as a duo, it was my third attempt of really, I no longer wanted to be in a band. Just mind you by that, I'd already done 2 major commitments with bands. And this was during that new wave, if you will. This was 80. I graduated high school in 1980, guys. So do the math. This was now 83. And I've been in every shithole and every amazing place that you'll see now. Wow, that's New York right there. Yeah. That ain't here.
Yeah. And New York does have a lot of shitholes, like for bands.
But I could name the shitholes, and you'd be like, "Oh shit, that's like everybody. That's the greatest place. That's great Gildersleeves, and nobody even talks about it anymore." But I played there, RT Fireflies, Gildersleeves, Bitter End, Bottom Line, you name it.
Bitter End, Bottom Line.
That was just on that's our list. I played it multiple times. Downstairs, and God, I can name it. But that was multiple times. Never ended. Pyramid Club. Hung out at the bar.
Yeah,
this is just in between, Tuesday nights, just to get drinks. This is just what you did. 8th Street and St. Mark's. That was what we had to do. But I'm just saying, it's like, I digress. But to me, it was the most important part of that was the nights out. You had to continually do your nights. That was to do it justice, so you could get your, you needed to get the kinks out. To me, Tell It to My Heart was the signature. After those 2 bands, I just said, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to go straight to the record. And then I met Rick. Straight to the record. I never wanted to be in a band situation again where I had to take 5 different people's opinions, 5 different people's. And Rick was the English guy that called me up, and I go, "Oh, is this for that Jive Records audition I went on?" And that was for a song, very specific song I went on. And Jive Records wasn't. It was Tommy Boy Records, and it was Jive, not the Jive that we now, where you hear, didn't turn into the Justin Timberlake. It was just at the beginnings of this. You're talking really early 80s, where it turned into that phenomenon with Britney and Timberlake and all that stuff. It wasn't quite there yet. And I was like, but I heard the song called Touch Me. And it ended up being a smash. Samantha Fox ended up being, but I heard the demo of it, and they said they're looking for KTU was just blowing up, and I heard it, and I knew. I was right there at that front line because Zanzibar was blowing up, and the clubs down, and what other club was really doing fine? Downtown, and I was hanging out. And I'd go there because I was working in a Russian club on the weekends, and I'd be out and about after 4 a.m., 5 a.m., and I met Rick, and then we'd go record vocals. And I was working with a really solid vocal crew that him and I had met in Trenton, and they were coming in and working on these solos, and that was Colonel Abram, not quite Colonel Abrams, but we had our own version of that, and that was Hunter Hayes. And if you listen to that old stuff with me on Leslie records, on those singles I did, and Hunter Hayes, Private Possession, those guys were all coming in from church and doing some massive stuff from Trenton. And you can listen on that Private Possession. That was all Rick and I, and that was Rick learning his craft and me learning my craft, sitting in with some of the best background singers, and that's Billy T. Scott. And they taught me how to listen and sing. And that's all went on Mariah's records. Those were all those singers. That did all those background arrangements. That was on Love Will Lead You Back, I'll Always Love You. All those first records of mine.
Yeah,
all Mariah's stuff.
So when you this record comes out, I mean, you always, of course, when you do something, know that you're proud of what you create and it's good. Were you prepared for how much that actually blew up? Like the surprise, was there a surprise to it?
All I knew is that Rick understood me. I understood Rick. Rick lived on a cot downstairs in the basement. I was working in a Russian nightclub. I knew that I didn't want to perform with bands anymore. I knew how much money I made a song in a Russian nightclub because I could sing anything phonetically. I was operatically trained. I'm done with the bands, and I'm going to sing. They're going to give me $100. The Gypsies, the whatever, are going to give me $100 to sing a song. I can basically hear anything, sing anything. I'm going to phonetically sing it, and I'm that crazy that I need to get a hit record. And I'm singing with Jamila, BT, and we're singing on everybody's, I can demo sing. I sang the demo for Don't Rush Me Already. Not that I knew that was a hit. Oh, okay. These are the songs we're singing on. I'm singing Hunter Hayes, and we already know. We're singing this street stuff that's going in the club. So we're as in the club as you can be. So I already know. But I'm in we're calling these records hip-hop. That's what hip-hop was before it was hip-hop, because it was only about the beat princess. These were the BPM. It was 123, 126. Not gonna let. Remember that stuff? Not gonna let. These were like 122, 126, 118. So my first single was, all I'm going to say is that's how you understand music. You're in the pools, you're in the DJ pools, you understand that. That was Rick. Rick had the ear for the singles. Rick had the ear for the music. So I said to Rick, what are we doing? He goes, you're gonna do a single. Ask your dad for money. And I'm going to figure out the song. We co-write it. We put out a couple of singles, him and I, under Leslie. You guys listen to those. And one's called Tell Me, Can You Love Me? Can you really love me? Under Leslie. Did okay. Took a shot. Still worked in the Russian club. Didn't pay my bills. They called me Luska. And I still maintained living. I still hustled in the Russian club. Still was going to the clubs in the city. And then finally, he goes, we need a crossover hit. Borrow the money from your father. I was driving, must have been 7, 8, 10 in the morning, leaving the clubs in New York imagine, I worked in the Russian clubs sometimes till 6 a.m. because they kept paying us tips. We'd stay until they stopped. 8, didn't matter. They keep paying us. And then a friend of mine was walking along the West Side Highway, Anthony, that I went to high school with, and he told me he was working at Warner Chappell.
Oh, wow.
I said, That's great. He goes, let me get you a demo tape. A friend of mine, Mary, is there. Probably was like 3 years after I graduated. And they did. And Tell It to My Heart was on the cassette. And Rick picked it out. He goes, I love this song. My deputy gave me $6,000.
So that's it. 6,000 to do the first record. So and that's
Do a single. I was only doing singles. We did singles, babe. I was not going. We did the single and we were releasing it. We've been releasing things just 12 inches. We knew the game. We hired Brad LeBeau to do the promo. We did the promo only. Like, we had this down. We did it.
Mm-hmm.
We got as far as Brad. We got as far as this. An A&R guy, Andy Furman, heard it from Arista. Actually, we shopped it around to a bunch of shit. I think Atlantic turned it down. A couple of people, and Andy took it into Arista. We got a single option album deal, and that was it. They paid us like $17,000 for the single, and that was it. Option album, and we had Dan. History.
It's just crazy that
crazy. And it blew up in Europe first.
Oh, so Europe was first. So what about the first time you hear it on the radio?
Europe, England, Germany, like, was the biggest thing ever. I won the Berliner Award within a year. And you know who won it the year before? Tina Turner.
Oh, nice.
Artist of the Year.
And you wound up writing a song for Tina too.
Well, I wrote it for me.
But when Tina asks, you.
No. I wrote it for me, and my label passed on it. They didn't think it was a hit. And what a beautiful declaration that the greatest of all time.
Yep.
Honored it.
Absolutely. You know, it's
great. Tina Turner.
You hear so many stories about how wrong
the shit out of it
a label can be. You know how wrong sometimes people can be on stuff, like when they rejecting.
It was a great validation to me, because that was supposed to be my signature writing album, and it was one of the great songs. And it was "I'll Wait" that I wrote. It was "Whatever You Want." That was my beautiful, and that was one of the most difficult albums that I had. I was trying to come out with this beautiful record, this anthemic record of my co-writes and all this stuff, and it was just such a battle. But I know what I know in my heart, and one day, someday, soon. That was "Whatever You Want Me to Do." It was just so. I think Trevor Horn produced it for her. It was magical.
So when the album first started getting big, the single started getting big, you got the opportunity to tour with Michael Jackson. You opened for Michael Jackson on the Bad tour, right? That is what was that like?
I bet you have some stories.
Yeah, what was he like, and what was that experience? Well, you don't
get, like, unless you were one, like, it was just me breaking. You know, it was my first record. It was my first singles. I was just breaking. And unless you're in that real, I just met him briefly. I made more of an impact on his manager, if anything, who ended up managing me, which was Frank DeLeo.
Oh, okay. So
who said, "I'm going to manage you one day," and he did.
So what's it like to go from?
What I learned from that tour was took away all this magical. Just I met Michael probably once from that tour, and he told Frank right to his face. He goes, "Frank." He'd tell me the craziest things. You know, Frank was just trying to keep the machine, whatever he was doing. "Frank, look at her. She's exhausting my audience. We need to get rid of her immediately. Look at them. They're dying with her. She's so insane. She's so much. She's so good. Get rid of her."
Really?
But it was Michael. Look, because he couldn't take it.
Intimidated.
No, he was never there. Are you kidding me? And Frank's like, Michael, don't worry about it. They're here for you. Remember when they were hosing down his people?
Yeah.
People were fainting and dying in the audience. He's like, "Michael, it's good. Don't worry. You can let some people get excited about somebody else." Yeah,
no, it's such a good point. So what's that like?
Meanwhile, they're hosing them and they're dying in the audience.
I know.
I watched it. He was the greatest entertainer you've ever seen. He would have military backstage with him, literally.
Really?
And they would do like cadence, like that, like martial, like military march.
Really?
You were backstage, and you were getting so They do count off military march before he went on stage to get him amped, and then they'd run him up the ramp, and he'd get up there and he burst into "Wanna be stopping something, got to be stopped." It was breathtaking, and he had that Dirty Diana shirt on. Remember the white shirt just blowing?
Sure, of course.
Mesmerizing. Want to be starting something. That was the first time. It was amazing.
Now, but for
But
you,
backstage, you got to understand, it was a whole. Michael had a whole energy. Everything was prepared. It was amazing feeling.
now for you specifically, though, you're coming from bars and clubs in New York, and now you are on stage in front of arenas. How and you have a memoir. I want to touch on this a little bit in as well. But so great title. Tell it to my heart. How I lost my shit, conquered my fears, and found my voice. But one of the things that you mentioned in there is that you
you mean the first? Yes.
You have agoraphobia.
My antidote. Well, in the first page.
Right, no, but I'm saying like you had agoraphobia growing up. You were afraid of crowds. And now you're on stage in an arena where everyone is looking at you. It's incredible that you were able to get
that. And doing it, and didn't even want to be with a band. She wanted to do it herself.
Okay, hold on. Okay, agoraphobia, let's put this where it needs to be. Because are there any teenage, I pray to God there's some beautiful 15-year-old girls, 17-year-old girls, mostly girls, or boys listening to this. Anybody that suffers from panic attacks, anxiety, panic attacks, because this is really where it needs to lie. This is about suffering from panic attacks. In those days, I suffered from panic attacks. And when you're a teen, what is the worst, most embarrassing thing you could have is panic attacks, anxiety. Who doesn't suffer from them? Well, I suffered badly and had no idea what it was. You know what I thought? I was losing my mind.
Yeah.
Straight up. Mm-hmm. Straight up thought I was losing my mind. Straight up thought I was a weak. Well, first of all, in my household, being weak, not acceptable on any level. Having panic attacks, you bury that inside anyway, right? Because I couldn't show that to anybody, least of all in my family, because I needed to get on with the shit. I needed to get on with the road show in my house, just for my own sanity, because I needed to keep everything inside, for sanity reasons and to keep my brother at bay for a lot of reasons. And you read the book, you can understand all that. Not to get into this right now. Mm-hmm. And of course, my father, just to keep my everything controlled so I could get through the day.
Right.
But boy, oh boy, anxiety and panic attacks, you think you're going crazy. And when you're young like that, 15, 16, so it started at a certain time. Obviously, when you're very young and nervous and insecure, and certainly you don't have control, when your life is controlled in your parents, you have to follow their, because that's really the definition of no control, right? Unfortunately, you can't control your environment. You can't, when panic takes over or insecurity, right? Or anxiety, and you can't. So I didn't understand that. I had no idea. I had no idea how to control them. So guys, it's really important that the term agoraphobia, fear of getting on planes. So when it took over so badly that I didn't understand what a full-blown panic attack makes you feel, this inescapable, right? I don't know if any of you have ever suffered from a panic attack. Have you ever had one?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You have?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you almost, I don't know if you've actually thrown up, passed out, or gone to this place where you almost, your mind leaves your body and you actually run because you feel like you're going to die. You hyperventilate to such a point. Have you had that experience?
I have one. Mine is a little, like everyone's, I'm sure, is different, but with me, it's just like you feel like your heart's coming out of your chest, sweating, just
you feel like you're going to die?
Panicking.
Can't breathe?
Yeah, I can't catch my breath. Yeah, it's a scary thing.
Or do you do it alone?
Alone.
Have you had them in public?
I have, but I've gotten to somewhere where I could be alone.
Interesting. How about you, Rob?
Yeah, there's one that I remember specifically. It's like you got, I don't even remember where it was. It was a restaurant, and I got throw up. I threw up. I got a cold sweat, there was no rhyme or reason. It was just like, why am I nervous? And it kind of snowballs. Like you start to wonder what's wrong. Why do I feel this? And because you're worried about what you're feeling, you start feeling worse. And you start panicking about the panic. And it becomes this cycle that it got very hard. It happened at a restaurant. I went outside. I remember I like just walked halfway down the block just to get away from everyone. I threw up right in the street. Very, very cold. And I don't know where it even came from. It just started happening. I was like, why am I feeling this? Like, why is this?
Yeah.
What? And the panic of the panic is, I think, the worst part, because it's like, why is my heart racing? Why can't I breathe? And then you panic because your heart's racing and you can't breathe. And then you feel nauseous because you're panic. It's like this layer on top of a layer on top of a layer. So, I totally get where you're coming from, especially when you're a teenager. And you mentioned, and again, I really urge people to check out the book, because you'll get a lot more backstory as to why you had mentioned that, you can't be weak in your household. So that must have been another layer on top of that. Like when you're young like that, at the age that
when you're young and you don't have the knowledge of what a panic attack is, you build a fear on top of a fear. That's why we call things a phobia. It's the fear of the fear itself. What's a phobia? I'm a fear of spiders. A fear of something that's irrational. That's what a phobia is, essentially, correct? So agoraphobia becomes a fear of space, or large spaces, or large or being. It's because you start. So what would a panic attack be? It's a fear of getting that feeling.
Yeah.
It's a fear of that anxiety.
Yeah.
But if you knew that you're never going to die from that feeling, you're never going to die from that. You're never going to die from a heart attack from that feeling, Lori. You're never going to die from that feeling. If you can talk yourself down, right? If you can breathe into it.
You breathe.
It's very freeing. You're never going to die from that. You're going to breathe yourself down from it. I wish I knew those tools when I was 15. I just thought I was immediately going to die. And so I was scared to ever be alone. I had to find safety zones and things. So I took myself really at 15, probably at 17, 8, I took myself out of the game. I kept putting myself in smaller spaces because I thought it was the space I was in that brought the fear. Mm-hmm. That's what agoraphobia is.
And
panic, that's what all phobias are. You take out the element that you think brings the fear.
Yeah, and in the book too, there's so much that you've overcome even before that. I mean, you had surgery at like 5 years old. Like you had physical issues as well. So, to get to the point, and I use the open for Michael Jackson as a I do like to use that as a reference point, because that had to be one of the moments where you're like, I might actually make it. Like I'm actually gonna blow up. Like I can see that moment. So when you read all of these other things, about what happened to you in the book, it makes it even more uplifting that you've gotten through all of that. But I'm so curious as to what it feels like. That I love when we interview celebrities and people, like we don't get to ever. I'm never going to know what it's like to be on a stage in an arena with thousands of fans. I'm never going to know that feeling.
And they all know the lyrics.
Right, they all know the lyrics. So what is that first time you're out there for Michael Jackson, and the song's out now, so people are starting to know the song and they're starting to know your singles. What is that first night like? Those moments when you walk on the stage and you see the arena, like that has to be just so overwhelmingly amazing and nerve-wracking, and just everything all balled up into one.
Well, the first thing was fear, right? Because you hear this roar. I try to describe that in the book, because you're doing somebody else's audience, and then you realize you have your own music. There's a song or two out there, which was "Tell It to My Heart" and "Prove Your Love." And when they look at you and you realize you've had this connection with these people, with this world, it's this divinity. It's a divine I learned how to finally, after years and years, you just don't understand. Even at my young age, I never understood the connection. How do you grasp it? We're still an artist and a kid. We're still kids up there. We can make the music. Doesn't mean that we can sail across the stage and connect with our audiences. We just give it. It doesn't mean we can hold it and feel their connection. It's very still difficult. But I finally started at the end of the show taking in what I was getting back, getting back and doing this receiving and reciprocal and reciprocity with my audience. And it took a therapist and a wonderful life coach to help me understand and do this whole reciprocity. And it was almost like an acupressure, a point she taught me how to do. And it was, oh my God, it was so healing. And it was just and it was like with everybody, and it was just it's been such a wonderful breakthrough for me.
Yeah.
Really amazing.
Yeah, it's a wonderful, it's funny when you mentioned, like, you were nervous and everything. When I was in a band and didn't go anywhere, didn't do anything, but we played Pyramid Club, we played CBGBs, we played all these places. And the way I would always describe it was, I hated everything that built up to getting on the stage. Didn't want to do it, didn't want to go, didn't want to load the equipment, didn't want to go through that. Got on the stage and just absolutely was anxious and was nervous, and then got on, and the second it started, loved every minute of it, and it ended. And then, it's like that little window there is just, it's so addicting. It really is a drug in its own way. And I'm talking about playing in front of 20, 30 people at CBGB, so I can only imagine what that must have been like. And the minute it's over, you just want to do it again. Like that's all it is what's next? How do I do it again? And, it's kind of gone on to this show, like before every guest. I don't know how great Taylor's going to be, and now I know. But I wonder, how's it going to go? How's the guest going to be? And you're like, do I want to do this right now? And then it starts. I love every minute of it, and it stops, and then I'm like, okay, what's next? It's like it's this high that I get what you mean about that.
You need to somehow. It's very important, though, to take that in, because it's still something I needed to understand how to receive and also give. Very important.
So how did your life change? Like, how did you learn how to receive that? Because I'm sure,
I had to do work.
So that's what you did.
I never knew I could do it with my music. I mean, it was a process. It's a process. It's not still a process.
I mean, I'm sure.
Fully everywhere, my friend.
So how do things change when you're starting to get number one hits? All of a sudden, I mean, everything about your friends, your family, your friends are always going to see you as your friends, and your family's always going to be your family. But how do dynamics change for you? How does your day-to-day life change? Do you start to get nervous about the second record and following it up? Do people start treating you differently to the point where you wish they wouldn't? How did that part change when you hit a level of fame?
I mean, in the beginning, changed a lot. Has to. And you can either notice it, choose to notice it. I mean, even within your own family, it's quite brutal. Mm-hmm. It's really brutal.
Well, so was there resentment that you felt because of it from your family?
When you're young, you don't feel much.
Good point.
Just use that, take that for whatever you want. And I was on a huge agenda. And I wasn't very family oriented. That's all in my book. That's not where my agenda was. I wasn't a Disney child.
Right.
That's very much, read the book. That's not how this went down. This was very Taylor went, and I'm a very New York girl, so this is, and I'm pretty sure that comes across. So this wasn't my parents managed me, and I went off to do my thing. That wasn't this.
Right.
This wasn't my brothers. My brothers were both in the music business as well. One was a lighting designer, worked at Studio 54 and Playboy Club. So one was working at Private Eyes. So they very ensconced in the industry themselves in different ways. So I went and did my dream, and worked hard at it. So
sure, you almost have to work harder when you're making that less. It's the opposite,
Yeah. So I mean, So I mean, I spent my 20s, 30s, 40s. I mean, this was. Yeah, I was deep in it. Definitely my 20s and 30s. I mean, that's where I was, for sure.
So I want to actually change gears a little bit and talk about what's been happening recently for you, because you have a single called Please that you put out about a year ago. And
last summer, yeah.
I rattled off of these numbers when we started about your sales, but again, look at this. This is just in 2020, 34 million streams, 9 million listeners, 2 million hours listen in 92 countries. Still, it's gotta be. That's amazing. Congratulations on that.
Thank you, baby.
Yeah, and then you wind up, and here it comes, on The Mask.
Yeah, man.
Which
now, that was fun. That was hard, fun, great stuff.
Yeah, so I got questions.
Popcorn any day of the week.
So first question is the one you probably get all the time. How do you sing in that suit? And it's because look at this. That's a big ass suit. Is there a headset on in there?
Does Mama like a challenge or what?
Yeah, I tell you, that's
not easy. But I loved everything about her, and I created this oh my goodness, everything about her. Just listen. There was another. We had another concept we were toying with, and I'm just so happy we stuck with Popcorn. She's just genius. Everything about her is just so. She was just so fun. She was just so delightful and just so energetic and just a fan favorite. Really, she just stomped it.
Yeah, well, when you come out with that voice, I mean, the voice just blew everybody away, because sometimes it's not always a singer. Sometimes it's someone sings a little. You crush those songs in that costume. How hot was it?
It's brutal. Did you hear what Buster said? He goes, "There ain't no oxygen in here."
That's so true.
We were taking fans it was very challenging at times. Super challenging.
So was there a microphone inside the house? Or was that mic was actually live?
Yeah. Listen, we had our challenges made for us, and no, we never had microphones inside the mask. I think the only one that did would have been Mark, because he had the puppet outside, so he would have had something have to have built inside, because he had the puppet outside. But that would have been the only character I can think of, the only mask that might have had that, because other than that, no. But I think everybody did a phenomenal job. So yeah, he would have been the only. That's it. Because I know Nick, and I've spoken to him after that, and anybody else. So yeah, and yeah, Leanne. No, yeah, Leanne and I didn't know her on the. We didn't speak as on the show, but I mean, yeah, her costume. No, we were very in proximity on set. She was literally my mate on the show.
Yeah, the reason why I bring it up is because through that costume, your voice projects as if you don't even have
this big mask on.
The mask on. It doesn't. You project through that. It's just a testament to your voice that I know there's a hole in the screen, but it can't be the same thing. It sounded as if you didn't even have the mask on. That's impressive.
Listen, they do magic over there, okay? This is no like cheap run of the mill situation at Fox. Get your shit together. They know what they're doing. And let me tell you something. We go in there, we do our vocals, we go on stage, and we knock it out. We handle business. No, it's real deal. 2 mic packs on, one for audio, one for talking, because we did we did a lot of we handled it. Yeah.
So when you do rehearsals for it, do you rehearse in the costume so that you can get comfortable with it?
Only until 10 minutes out. We had 10 minutes in, 10 minutes out with mask on. Only with costume, yes, not mask on.
Oh, wow.
But then we'd have to put our visor on, yes. Not the mask, but the visor, yes. Everything was top secret. It was really like crazy.
That's actually what I always wonder is just like how
top secret.
Yeah, I was gonna say like how much does anybody know?
Even your driver. Nobody was ever called any name except I was Popcorn. Mm-hmm. Even emails were sent from another. You were never addressed in your name. You were always your stage name, Popcorn. No emails came to your name. No emails came from Masked Singer. They were called like another thing, like I don't know, like Max Factor Tower. They never come from Masked Singer. Really secretive.
Yeah, it sounds like.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, because
it's so fun. And dude, here's the funniest part. I'd walk out on stage, and sometimes I could only see out of one eye, one thing. They'd have lyrics up, and I'd be like, "Oh shit!" I walked down the wrong aisle, and they knew how cray shit would get, and they couldn't even like say anything. Like the choreographer, really, it's okay. You had a new choreographer for every song you did.
Oh wow! So whoever. Wow, so they'd have to change that out too. That's
remember you go in the room with the same person. And let's say you're taping because COVID, they changed everything up. So let's say you were doing like 2 weeks of taping and rehearsals and doing everything. So let's say you had 3 songs you were doing in 1 week for 3 different days. If you got so lucky to be on the show, you like keep going and going and going, which I got so lucky. And I'd be like, oh, hi. And you forget, and you're with another person and another group of dancers like the next day.
Wow.
Crazy.
So it sounds like
I'd be like Green Animals. Tape me, let me see. Tape. Oh yeah.
It sounds like just like a boot camp of just like continuous performance and just like practice.
But you gotta be.
Sounds insane.
Yeah. That's where it comes to the. Yeah. Oh, it was nuts. It was great. Yeah. I loved it. I'm like, put me in my room. Give me my little trailer. Leave me be. Boom, boom, boom. Yep. Oh yeah.
So what's next for you, Taylor? I know it's in the times of COVID, you're a performer, and it's got to be.
I'm working on my Dayne's Den. Check out my Insta.
Yeah, actually, I got one right there.
Oh yeah, this is new and good. This is a little story time we did, but I got a new little project in the works. I'm loving it.
Yeah. So I have it shared up on the screen, The Real Taylor Dayne on both Instagram and Facebook, and it's just Taylor Dayne on Twitter, I believe, if I remember that correctly. But yeah, your social media is great. Like you really you put a lot of effort into it. I'm so lazy.
We're getting cooking. We're cooking away.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're working on new music as well?
Yes, and this is through Dayne's Den. So I have been after Masked Singer. It was just so much fun. Really digging into some of these covers and some of the, newer, so we pulled up What About Us, Pink, and, I really haven't been able to tour. So really, I went into my back house, into the studio, into the Dayne's Den, and it was really been delightful working with, all of us artists just sitting home and, a lot of these great musicians that I've been wanting to work with.
I urge everyone once again, you can go to TaylorDayne.com, but follow Taylor on Instagram. Again, The Real Taylor Dayne on Instagram. The Dayne's Den, she's absolutely right, is great. She's
So that's what's exciting and new. So yeah, after doing the Masked Singer, I was like, touring is still like, we're building up this Dayne's Den. And so after really covering so many of these great, new songs, new artists, obviously, and reinterpreting them, it really, everybody's always like, when are you going to do cover? Like, why can't you do it like Kelly Clarkson? My son's always like, you need new music. So yes, obviously challenged by that, of course, always writing. And he goes, not just singles, a new album, blah. And I'm like, okay, understood, loud and clear, heard. And so, but it's challenging putting a whole record together. But of course, playing live is what I do, and I love it. So we're in the back house, we're in the den, doing the Dane's Den, and having a ball. We're loving it, and there's some great covers coming through. And so I think you guys are going to start seeing a bunch of snippets of it. We're putting it together, we're having a ball, and every week we're going to be playing it for you, showing it to you, streaming it to you live, and or putting it up on YouTube. We're debating how we want to showcase it, but we promise you content every week for sure.
That's amazing. Well, Taylor, again, I can't thank you enough for spending the time with us, and it was an honor.
Oh, I love it.
I wish you nothing but the best going forward, and you're always welcome here anytime you want to promote something, talk about something, or just talk about some old 60s and 70s music.
Well, let's just shoot the breeze.
Absolutely.
Loved it.
Taylor, thank you again.
Thank you, Taylor.
Thanks, guys, so much.
Enjoy that Chipotle chicken.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, sorry. It's probably cold now. My bad. Bye-bye.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Right.
Bye.
Thank you.